Coming in at number 19 on our organizational value rankings. He was a guest on this show about 2 weeks ago. It's the Great Dane. It's Mads Søgaard.
What a year for Mads Søgaard. I mean, an absolute roller coaster type year for him as he essentially splits his time in the AHL and NHL. Not according to plan, I think, for him to get 19 NHL games, and he played 22 in Belleville. But you know what? He made the most of a tough situation, because not only did he get thrown in there because of multiple injuries to the goalies in the NHL, but the team wasn't exactly 100% healthy either, and it was a lot of reinforcements in front of him too. But I think this was good experience and good exposure for Mads Søgaard, and something that he can build off that pro NHL experience and take a look at film, a lot of video over the summer, and see kind of, what do I need to work on to be prepared to be better at the NHL level? But for me, Ross, I guess this is kind of starting off early on this, but I'll just say I really would like Mads Søgaard. His goals for me this season is to get consistent time as the starter in Belleville, and hopefully there's not too many injuries in the NHL and he doesn't have to come up for long stretches, because I really want him to start building confidence in Belleville and in the AHL, because apart from when he first got here and he had that miraculous 7-0 run, it's been tough sledding for him down in Belleville. Now they've got the team to support Tendies properly, so I think he can have a great season.
Name one thing that pisses off Pilsy more than goalies moving up and down.
Drives me nuts. I mean, the mental game is so important, and if you don't know what team you're playing for, where you got to catch a flight for, is your equipment coming, like all these kinds of crazy things can happen when you're up and down all over the place. And when you're a young goalie trying to develop, honestly, consistency is the key. You need routine, you need balance, and you need to have those things that you're comfortable with so that you can succeed.
I completely agree. Now, looking back at last season with Mads Søgaard, almost identically split between the AHL and NHL. In the AHL, he played 22 games and he played 19 at the National Hockey League level. Before I read off these stats, it has to be stated, he was the NHL's Rookie of the Month. I'm not talking about goalie. Out of all rookies in the National Hockey League in February, he was the dude who got that done. And still a long way to go in his career, but you want to see a bit of improvement next year in terms of the numbers. There were games where Mads was unbeatable, and there were games where it's like, okay, 1 goes in, then 3 goes in type thing last season. So 6-10-2 record in the AHL, 347 goals against, an 893 save percentage, and in the National Hockey League, an 889 save percentage and a 332 goals against average. But Pilsy, I think to really get a sense of the season for Mads Søgaard, you can kind of see the dips and valleys and heights are all kind of in unison to how the Senators were performing as well.
Big time.
Like there was that road trip, right? If you take out, and again, you can't take out the road trip, but right where the season went completely off the rails, where they went, I don't know if you remember the game in Chicago. But even the win in Seattle, but then Vancouver and Edmonton, and Mando played the game in Calgary. But in those 4 games, Pilsy, Mads had a 843 save percentage. I'm not saying you can take out certain games, but that overall save percentage, if you do take out those 4, it goes up quite a bit. So I think that you really have to kind of dig into the numbers a little deeper before just being like, oh, sub 900 save percentage, get out of here.
No, definitely got to do some more digging before you toss the get out of here. That's for sure. And I believe, Ross, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mads said a lot of his focus this offseason was working on his mental game. And right. I think, that's a great place for him to start, because we saw Mads was very hard on himself and he had high expectations and felt that it was his responsibility to be winning games for that injury-riddled team last year in the NHL as a young goalie. And that's just not the case. Like he shouldn't and isn't expected to carry the team on his shoulder like that. So that's why I want him consistent games in Belleville, because I believe he can dominate there with a good roster. And then once he's got that confidence up and his mental game is at kind of an all-time high and he knows he's ready and what to expect, then I think he can succeed playing in Ottawa.
I believe that to be the case as well. He's 22 years old.
So young.
like, let's not Ben Bishop ourselves here and say, oh, it's
Yeah.
done right. And then we saw what happened with Ben Bishop's career. Sometimes, especially these big goalies, they take a little longer to get their feet wet. And for Mads, it's looking at his chart over and over again, year by year. Like last year, man, 40 plus games between the NHL and the AHL. And I think that's got to be the most he's played in a season since well, definitely pre-COVID. And yeah, ever. The most he played in the WHL was 37 games. He did that in back-to-back years. Played 35 in Belleville last season, but this year, yeah, over 40 games. So I want to see over 40 games again. Hopefully most, if not all of them in Belleville, and just work on the composure too. Like not getting so, I told him, I was like, man, you're too hard on yourself sometimes. Like I think that it's important for him to just be able to let it go. If he lets one in, refocus, bang, you'll be after it next year. I'm excited to see him in training camp. Like I could see him coming into training camp and putting up some zeros in preseason action. That would be money for the confidence level. So we're rooting for Mads, man. I'm a big fan of him, and you don't see that many goalies standing 6'7". So for him to be able to have this much experience already at 22, I think that says a lot for his future. Pillsy, this year, Mads comes in at 19. Last year, 19. The year before, 19.
Wow.
And the first time he was on the list, he was 35th right after his first year after being drafted. So Mads Søgaard coming in at number 19 on our organizational value rankings.